Alrighty, welcome back to Shut Up and Ball. We are back with the Week 11 picks against the spread. I'm Aaron, and I am joined by my typical Mr. John Harris, and we're just gonna dive right into it. So, going to the picks. Last podcast we made our Thursday night picks, but I will re-announce them for in case you missed it. New England Patriots favored by 7.5. They are going to the Atlanta Falcons. We both went New England, and once again, don't know how spreads work. New England, basically, because we both picked New England, John and I, New England has to win by 8 or more for us to cover / win. Otherwise, Atlanta will get the win there. So, but obviously, if you're listening / watching to this, probably games are a result, so you're probably didn't matter. But just in case we were right, now you know. But now, gonna head over to the Sunday games because I haven't picked those yet. You're going to start off in Buffalo. Isn't that Orchard Park too, right? What they call it? Think where they play?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I have no
I
idea.
watched too many Bills games. I think it's like I said, just should be honorary Bills, secondary Bills fan. But Buffalo Bills favored by 7.5 at home, hosting the Indianapolis Colts. John, who do you got here?
Well, before I dive into any of the picks, I just want to say, and I don't know if you know
Oh,
this, over the last 3 weeks, the underdogs have covered a majority of the games each week,
yeah.
which after learning that, it made me a little more risky this week, but also I'm just scared that like I'm gonna get all these picks wrong. And uh I'm taking Buffalo in this one, especially since they're at home. I think that the Colts, Carson Wentz just didn't do much last week, and that was against the Jags. And I think the Bills are a far better defense. I think that it wasn't necessarily because Carson Wentz didn't have to perform, but maybe just a combination of the Jags defense played well, Jonathan Taylor was playing well, all that stuff. And so I think in this one, the Bills are going to try and probably take away Jonathan Taylor on the ground. I'm not sure how plausible that is, but I know they're going to make Carson Wentz have a tough day. So I'm taking the Bills, but at the same time, just seeing all the underdogs covering, and then also a lot of underdogs just outright winning, it has me scared, and it has me worried. And the Colts are one of those teams that I just have not been able to fully get right this year. I early on in the year just felt like they weren't very good. Then they started winning games, and then I start picking them, and then they don't cover. So I don't know, but I'm taking the Bills.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. I should have even led this before we went to the picks. Last week, John went 6-8. I went 5-9. We were tied going into last week, so technically, John does have a 1-game lead as of right now. But like, so we're at the midpoint of the season. So, anyways, but yeah, in regards to underdogs, like I considered, I don't remember if I did this last year. I might have. Where I think at one point where I was like, I'm just gonna pick the games and then I'm gonna flip my picks because I was getting to a point where that would work out better for me. I didn't do it this week. I considered it, but I just forget if I did it last year. Anyways, so yeah, John has a 1-game lead on me, just for those keeping score. I'm going Buffalo here, though, in regards to this game as well. As good as Indy's offense has been, it's been reliant upon the run game, like we mentioned last week. And like I said, I don't know if it's Carson Wentz maybe changing the play at the line of scrimmage because I'm sure he has that freedom, or Frank Reich, and I don't want to accuse either in case it's the other. Nonetheless, I would. Indianapolis just isn't patient with the run enough, especially against a good Bills defense. I get a bad feeling, and I am a Carson Wentz defender, but I also like Josh Allen. But regardless, I get a bad feeling they're not gonna let Jonathan Taylor just run all over them. And even if he does, I think the Bills' offense, will be able to put points on Indy's defense because, like we mentioned, kind of like some other defenses, like the Cleveland, they're going to run their cover three most of the game, and that's what they do. And they're just going to, they're not really going to adjust much off of that, and that does worry me. But yeah, my main fear, though, regardless, is games is probably going to be put in Carson Wentz's hands. And just being honest, you can't. I don't really trust him fully to not make a mistake, especially against a good defense in Buffalo that can't create turnovers. And Sean McDermott's very smart defensive coach, as well as Frazier, their defensive coordinator. So yeah, going Buffalo as well, and I think they'll cover. Carson Wentz factor is what really scares me because I just feel like there's going to be an interception or a time where he's trying to save the day, be Superman, throw a pick or get stripped, and then that's pretty much ball game. So that is that there. Both went Buffalo. Now taking it over to the Windy City, where the Baltimore Ravens, they are favored by 5.5, going to Chicago to face the Bears, obviously. So yes, John, who do you got here for this matchup?
I'm taking the Bears, and this is one of those games where it's like I don't know, the underdogs are covering a lot. I liked the Bears last week, or sorry, 2 weeks ago against Pittsburgh. And I don't know. I think the Bears are starting to figure things out. Justin Fields is starting to run. I think he's gotten more comfortable in the NFL. So he realizes that he doesn't necessarily have to just sit in the pocket the whole game. If the play breaks down, you're athletic, use your legs. And so I don't know. I like the Bears. I think they're figuring stuff out. David Montgomery's back. He had a full workload in their last game, and it helps now that they have their bye week too. Meanwhile, for the Ravens, they just really haven't been performing to the level that we expect them to. They have a lot of injuries. And yeah, so I like the Bears here because they're starting to figure stuff out. And also, I mean, what we saw last week for the Ravens, I know that they had, a short week, but I, I, I just don't know how they lost that game to Miami in the fashion that they did. I, Maybe this is the bounce back week, but with all the injuries they have, I'm not going to bet on it.
Yeah, I'm going Chicago here as well. I think Chicago's got at least enough, a solid enough running attack, to keep it close. And like we mentioned before, Baltimore's defense just isn't what it has been in previous years. Some defenses they age. We saw that with New England. Last year defense just kind of, teams pick up their guys, and then some guys get older. So I think Baltimore's going to have to reload this offseason. But yeah, I think Chicago will keep it close. Obviously, the only thing that scares me is Baltimore comes out with a good game plan against Matt Nagy's simplistic offense. But regardless, on the flip side, I think the Bears' defense should be good enough to slow down Lamar Jackson and that passing and just the offense in general. I think Lamar will still win with his arm, but I think they're going to have a tough time on the ground because we know that Baltimore's going to want to establish the run game, and Chicago's still got a pretty good run defense. Not sure if Khalil Mack is active. I should have probably pull up the injury reports here. I should have done that beforehand. But regardless, I'm with you, John. I think even if Baltimore wins, it's going to be a close game. Should be probably another game. It's probably cold as heck there too, because it is just getting colder in the U.S. in general. So, I mean, Texas here is what, like 50-ish right now,
Yeah.
57. So, and I know from people I know up north, it's already getting actually cold. So, I think that'll start factoring into games as well. But yeah, so we both went Chicago there. So hopefully they cover for both of us. Now going on to keeping in that region, going to Cleveland, where the Browns are at home and they are hosting the Detroit Lions. Browns are favored by 11.5 against the Detroit Lions. I'm assuming we both think that the Browns are going to win. So the major question is, do we believe that they will cover? John, do you think that the Browns will cover that 11.5 spread?
All right. So here is my dilemma is, the Browns first off are a team that have disappointed me greatly. But the Lions are also just weird because there's a lot of games you're like, man, like I don't know. I feel like I've kind of been riding the Lions covering train for a lot of the year. And there's games where I've been right. And then there's games like the Packers one where they just collapse in the second half on me. And, then I'm sad. So I don't know how to feel about the Lions, especially since like some games they look like they're finally going to win, and then other games they look like the 0-8 team, I guess 0-8-1 team that they are. So I just don't know how to feel, but ultimately I'm going with the Browns, and that's because I don't think Jared Goff is fully confirmed to play in this one. It's looking like signs are pointing towards him potentially sitting, which means David Blau comes in. Which, fun fact about David Blau, he has a career yard total of -1 yards. A lot of that's because he came in for kneeling the ball out, but he has like -16 total rushing yards and then like 15 total yards positively. So -1 total yards. Anyway, so yeah, I don't feel like the Lions have enough firepower to really keep up with Nick Chubb in that offense. And although the Browns have been disappointing, we're still like 2 weeks removed from when they just put up 41 points on the Bengals. So I'm not ready to give up on the Browns yet. Maybe it's because I had them picked to be the second seed in the AFC. I don't think they're going to be that anymore, but I still just I can't. I don't know if they don't win this one, I'd be shocked. But if they don't cover this one, once again, just really disappointed.
And by the way, it's going to be Tim Boyle is actually
Tim
expected
Boyle.
to
I
be
don't
their
know why I said
backup.
David Blau.
He was their backup last year, I believe.
Okay.
If I'm remembering correctly, this is the right Boyle. Just want to make sure. I think he was on my
So
Packers
maybe
last
it's
year.
Tim Boyle that has that
Yeah,
negative
he was
1
on my
yards.
Packers. Let's see.
I saw somewhere that somebody
He's
that
got
played for the
15 yards
Lions.
in his career.
Yeah, it's Tim. It's him then because
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
sorry,
15 positive yards,
but negative
negative
16
16.
rushing
Yeah,
as a
it's because of
Packer.
kneeling. Yeah.
Yeah, because usually they're. Anyways, sorry, and so you went with John with the Browns case
Going Cleveland.
to cover. I'm going with Detroit here. I think we saw a little bit last week. If you can stop the Browns' run game or slow it down, they not only do they not really have the horses in terms of the pass game, but they just don't have their passing game is pretty simplistic to begin with. I mean, Baker even mentioned he's beat up, so he's obviously not 100%. Not that everyone else is 100%, but he obviously mentioned it. And from what I saw last week too from the Lions on offense, with Dan Campbell calling plays, and especially if it is Tim Boyle, I think they're just going to lean on that run attack. They do have a solid O line, so I like I said, I think that they'll keep this close. It'll be an uglyish game. I think Cleveland will still prevail, probably make a play or two, but it wouldn't shock me. This is one I would put on upset alert. It wouldn't shock me if this could be the classic scenario for a team like Cleveland where one loss turns into two, especially when you got blown out the week before, and then you got to pick yourself up against a Detroit team that had a tie the week before. So like they can taste victory, they're just not quite there. Regardless, I think Detroit will keep it close enough. I don't know the weather conditions, but it wouldn't shock me if the weather's bad again too. Which they just played a really bad weather game, and Heinz Field when it was raining most of the game. So even if it's not nearly as that bad, I'm sure they'll be like, man, last week was nothing. So yeah, maybe some out there analysis, but I'm going Detroit here to cover. So we'll see how we do there. So one of our disagreements of the week. But keeping it in the AFC, going to the AFC South now for a divisional matchup with the Tennessee Titans at home, favored by 10.5, hosting the Texans. By the way, John, like Tennessee is, I don't know about how you feel, but Tennessee was one of the last 2 weeks I've been like waiting for the Tennessee fall. They're like the only team that didn't get upset. If anything, they were the upsetters. So I'm not sure how you felt. But regardless, how do you feel about them in this game? Do you think that I'm assuming we both feel that they'll win. Question is, will they cover?
I'm taking Houston. I think Tennessee wins, and I think it's just Mike Vrabel. Once again, I gave him a lot of props in the last our reactions, but I love him as a coach. I think that he's really scrappy. He gets guys to step up. He gets guys to win. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to cover. And we saw that last week against the Saints. I think they only won by 2. And I think the spread was like 2.5. So they didn't cover. It was a close one. Now, obviously, the Saints are a far better team than Houston, but the spread's also now to 10.5. And I don't know, that just feels big. Wouldn't be shocked if they won by 10. And then once again, they don't cover. So I don't know. I'm in the same boat as you. I'm waiting for the Tennessee collapse. I don't think they're the best team in the AFC or the best team in the NFL, like their record may indicate. Just because with no Derrick Henry, I don't know. The game against the Rams, it was impressive because of how dominant they were, but at the same time, I don't expect their defense to be that good every week. They had a pick 6 from like the 5-yard line, and then another interception from like that close that was basically 2 scores, and that was kind of the difference of the game. I don't think their defense is that good to where they're going to do that every week. I think they can step up and make plays. Jeffrey Simmons has been a beast. Kevin Byard's, top 5 in the league in interceptions, but I still think they have weaknesses. And I don't know. I'm in the same boat. Like I said, waiting for Tennessee to start, rattling off some losses that maybe they shouldn't have because they don't have Derrick Henry there to, steady the ship. So I'm taking Houston. Tyrod, he's back, fully healthy, ready to go. And so, we'll see what happens. But maybe I'm just discounting Tennessee and how good they are.
Yeah. I'm going Houston as well. I think they'll cover. Divisional matchup. I think both sides kind of should have a feel for the players, some of their tendencies. Maybe I know Houston's got a new coaching staff this year, but Nick Caserio, their GM from New England, so a lot of the same ideologies from both sides. So yeah, I think that will keep it close. And yeah, I mean Tyrod's playing this. I'm not sure if they've already played each other before earlier in the season. I forget.
I don't think they
It's
have.
Houston. It's tough with Houston because most of the games like we didn't care about. So it's like I don't even remember who they played the previous week and such. But regardless, yeah, I think that they'll keep it close just for pride, things like that. And 10's a lot. I mean, in Tennessee, I just don't think that their offense is going to explode out of the gates to even blow out teams. I mean, obviously they did against the Rams, but that was like John mentioned, a combination of their defense really kicked them off and getting them a lead. So, yeah, I expect Houston to at least keep it within 10. Wouldn't be surprised if it's like a 17-point game, garbage time touchdown, and they keep it, and they cover. Or it's just kind of just a two-possession game most of the game. So we both went Houston there. Not much further analysis needed. Sorry if you're a Texans fan, or Tennessee fan, but there's just not much to add on there, and I don't want to spend more time on that. But now going on to Minnesota, my Green Bay Packers. They are favored by only 1.5 at Minnesota. So basically, we're essentially picking who's going to win. So John, what do you feel about this one?
I'm going to the Packers. I'm a bit surprised that the spread is like this. I just I think the Vikings are a good team. I think they've done a really good job at fighting back from the hole that they were in. I think they started 1-3, 0-3, one of those. And so props to them for fighting back to 4-5. But at the same time, I mean, like we've seen this Vikings team have like some really good highs and some really low lows. And I don't know. They tend to have a lot of really close games, and if that's the case, I'm taking Aaron Rodgers over Kirk Cousins every day of the week. Not even close. And then also, I mean, AJ Dillon. Like I know that Aaron Jones isn't playing, but AJ Dillon, when he gets at least 11 touches, I think he has over 70 yards every time that he's done that. When it comes to like rushes, and so I think that he's primed for a really big game too against Minnesota, whose run defense has not been amazing this year. I think they're allowing 100 rushing yards a game. So I don't know. We'll see. Minnesota, they're putting up a lot of fight this year, but I'm not comfortable picking against Aaron Rodgers and a Packers defense who has really been good over the last stretch of games, in such a tight spread.
Yeah, I'm going with my Packers as well. I think, like you mentioned, AJ Dillon. I don't think the run game will skip a beat. I think the offense will get back on track. I know last week wasn't great, but like we mentioned, Rodgers was out for basically 2 weeks, no practice really. Probably only had that Saturday walkthrough. So now he actually gets a week of practice under his belt. Some people not under fire for the vaccination stuff. Not as much fire as he was anyway. And then on the flip side, like I mentioned last podcast, I mean, usually I'd be scared to death because I'm like, man, our run defense sucks in previous years, but Joe Barry's done a great job with his defense, playing tougher and bigger, and guys like Rashawn Gary have stepped up, and Devondre Campbell's been a very good addition as an inside linebacker. So, yeah, I'm confident that my Packers will win this one and cover. I think, like I mentioned before, it's playing the game the right way. A lot of good game plans on both sides of the ball. The Packers have come out with on most games, and I mean, like I said, only two losses. That week one just got thumped by the Saints, and I think that was just more lack of preparation / readiness. And the other loss was 6-point loss to the Chiefs without Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love. So, yeah, I think that they'll handle Minnesota and win this game. So there is that. And now
Also,
go ahead.
the Packers they just own the division. Like they just have for such
Yeah,
a
the
long time
division's.
that
I
it's
think if we win this game, we basically get the division. Like we have to either win one more game, or the Vikings lose a game, we clinch. So, and there's
I
still like 6
wonder
weeks after that. Basically,
I
6 weeks
wonder
after.
what like LaFleur's record is against the division. I know that it's like crazy in the regular
I
season.
think
Like I
we've
think
only lost. I know we lost to Minnesota at least once.
okay. I mean,
I
but
forget.
like
I think we
I,
tied his first year, but other than that, not many. I don't think we've lost to the
yeah,
Lions under
I think
him.
LaFleur doesn't even have like double digit losses yet as a head coach. So I mean,
Yeah,
there can't be a lot. Like I highly doubt that even half of those are probably against the division. So I don't know.
yeah, no. There's probably only like, if not that one, maybe two. I don't think the Bears ever beat us. So I think it's only
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
It would only be that one loss to the Vikings, not one tie. It's probably like something 1-1.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we both went Green Bay there. Now going back to the AFC East, where the Miami Dolphins, fresh off that Thursday night win against Baltimore, they are favored by 3.5, going to the New York Jets to play Joe Flacco. First start, and I forget when. But yeah, he's back in New York. I think he was in New York before. I forget where he's been since Baltimore. But anyways, John, do you believe in the Jets, or are you going with the Dolphins here?
I'm taking the Jets. I have no rationale why. This is one of those games where the underdog is covering a lot. I'm going with it. I think that Miami won last week, but it was not pretty by any means. And if we're being real, like the Sammy Watkins fumble sort of decided the game. So I don't necessarily think that Miami's they're like figuring things out. Like I've seen some people throw around about the Dolphins after last week. And so I think this could just be ugly. And like I said, underdogs are covering a lot, so I'm comfortable taking the Jets. Even though Joe Flacco, that part worries me a little bit. Like he's 36 years old. Like he's not, the young Joe Flacco that we used to watch.
Yeah, and that's precisely why I'm taking the Miami Dolphins here to win and cover. There's just not a lot of talent on the Jets offense, like you mentioned. Elijah Moore's been really good in recent weeks, but that's really about it. Michael Carter's been, better. Um, but I just, like you mentioned, it's Joe's first start, and I don't even know how long it's been since he's actually been thrown in a game. It's different when you're in there with live bullets. And this is a Miami team, as we know, loves to throw creative blitzes and create constant pressure and havoc. And it's hard for probably any quarterback to jump in and do that, but much less Joe Flacco, like you mentioned, 36. I get bad vibes. I know it's not great analysis, but I'm not comfortable taking the Jets in this situation. So yeah, I went with Miami, but this is definitely one of those games. Like many, I just don't feel comfortable with either team. But I'm going with Miami. I think they're more talented right now and just a little bit better coached at the moment. So another one of our differences there. So we'll see how that goes. But now going up to Philadelphia, where the Eagles are at home, and they are favored by 1.5, hosting the New Orleans Saints. This is a rematch of last year, actually. I think this was Jalen Hurts' first or second
Yeah,
start. Is where he really
first
popped
one.
off. So yeah, do you think he'll do it again?
No, I'm taking the Saints here. I'm surprised that they're the underdogs. Just plain and simple, over the last 3 years, the Saints are 9-2 against the spread as underdogs. Which I mean, over the last 3 years, they're not the underdogs very often, but when they are, they tend to cover. And so I'm taking them here. And the biggest reason why is the Eagles, as we asked for them to do, in the first half of the season, they've morphed into a run heavy team, and that's worked out for them so far. But the Saints right now statistically have the best run defense. I think they're only allowing 56 rushing yards as a team. And so yeah, plain and simple, I just don't think that the run game is going to have success against the Saints. Their front seven has just been on another level this year. So that's going to happen. Also, Devontae Smith, he's going to see, Marshawn Lattimore, who's just been great this year. So I'm taking the Saints.
Yeah, I'm with you as well. I think the Saints will be able to stop that Philly run offense. And like we mentioned before, I'm just like usually if the run's working well, then I'm fine with their pass game because they can do things off the run. But when it's not working, and if especially if it doesn't work this game, if they have to, drop back and pass, be down 10 or just in general, I'm just not entirely confident in Jalen Hurts and just the creativity of the passing concepts to have success. And then on the flip side, um, even though I think Alvin Kamara, I think he didn't practice today, so I wouldn't be shocked if he doesn't play again. They still found ways last week against a solid Tennessee defense to move the ball with Trevor Siemian. Once again, I'm not really sure why they don't play Taysom Hill at quarterback. I just think he offers more in terms of he's got a better arm down the field and obviously can run himself. I don't know if they just don't trust him as a play caller and such. But regardless, I think the Saints will take care of business on offense as well. This Philly defense, especially their secondary, has been hit or miss the past few weeks. And also, I just think too, one of those games, Saints, I think they've lost two straight. Philly's kind of on a roll. It's desperation. and that's kind of what's helping some of these underdogs. It's a long season. I think they know that they need to start winning games. Saints, especially in the NFC, they got to turn things around quickly. So, yeah, I'm with John. I'm going New Orleans for this game as well. Keeping it in their division, going to Carolina, where the Carolina Panthers are at home, and they are favored by 3.5, hosting the Washington football team. So it's Cam's back home facing Ron Rivera, who's also your revenge game. A few headlines here. John, who do you got here for this one?
This one was a toss up for me. I wanted to take Washington, but I just think the Panthers defense is really the differentiator for me. I just worry about how effective Scary Terry's going to be against that secondary with Stephon Gilmore, Dante Jackson, just all the guys they have back there. So that's a big reason as to why I'm going to take Carolina. But also, I just think that Cam has I mean, we'll see what happens with his first full game as the starter. He hasn't been named the starter yet, but like he's probably going to be the starter. I think that he's just going to revitalize the team. I think there's going to be, just a newfound energy amongst the Panthers in that locker room. And I think a lot of the guys are just really excited for him to be there. Plus, I'm not really sure how Washington's going to be able to stop Christian McCaffrey. I mean, pretty much nobody has the answer for that because of how many different ways he can get involved. So, taking the Panthers, and it might be personal for Cam when it comes to Ron Rivera. I know that when they've had the different injuries over the years, Rivera has not called Cam.
Oh, okay, you unfroze. You were frozen for a second. I was about to say you froze, but you unfroze. I'm going
Could you
Carolina.
still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you. It's just
Okay.
you like your camera froze.
Okay.
But regardless, I'm going Carolina as well. Even if Cam and the offense aren't fully in sync, I just think, especially they showed last week they're willing to run Cam. I think Cam's at the point in his career he's basically playing for his next contract to prove it. So I think he'll be willing to do the extra, quarterback keepers and the option stuff if they have to. But also, I mean, like people have mentioned all over social media, it's probably the best weapons he's had. He had McCaffrey news there, but it wasn't like this iteration of Christian McCaffrey. And then obviously same thing with DJ Moore. Didn't have this iteration of DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson and Tommy Tremple's. Obviously not as good as Greg Olsen, but that's the only maybe downgrade. But he's a solid tight end. And then I expect their defense to also help them out as well, because their defense has kept them in a lot of games and basically almost won them games as well. So. And then Washington, especially with no Chase Young, I think that really hurts too. If Carolina does go the more ground and pound route, so both went Carolina there. Both expect some home cooking for them and Matt Rule. But now going down to Florida, where the San Francisco 49ers, they are favored by 6.5, going to Jacksonville. Who do you have here, John?
I'm going to take the Jags. I think their defense deserves more credit than people are giving them. They had that game against the Bills where they held them to 6 points. And this game against the Colts was honestly pretty close for the most part. And they did not allow Carson Wentz to have a very good game. He didn't really turn the ball over, but I mean, his passer rating was pretty poor. He only had 180 yards through the air. And so I'm going to take the Jags in this one. I also I don't know. I don't really trust Jimmy Garoppolo. The Jags are actually surprisingly so far one of the best teams when it comes to pressuring the opposing quarterback. I think they're like top 5 in pressure rate. And Jimmy, I think so far has been graded as the worst starting quarterback against pressure. So we'll see what happens. Mike McGlinchey obviously lost for the season. They're starting right tackle a few weeks ago. I think that Josh Allen has really started to come on for that Jags defense. So I'm going to take the Jags. I think they keep it close. I think that James Robinson and Trevor Lawrence can get some things going offensively, but in large part, I'm trusting in their defense. Which maybe I'm an idiot for trusting in Urban Meyer, and if I'm wrong on this one, I'll totally own up to that.
I've not that I don't trust their defense, but I'm going San Francisco. I think that I will give credit. Jags defense is pretty solid, probably the bright spot this year for their team. I would say they're average / above average, but they're mainly built on their speed, athleticism, and I think especially from what we saw last week against the Rams, I think the 49ers, they're just going to Kyle's going to run it more than pass it. And I think they're going to keep it on the ground, involve Debo, Elijah Mitchell. I think they're just going to not only overpower, but he'll probably get a few runs schemed against Jacksonville and then force their hand. And I think that I just think the San Francisco offense will have success. And on the flip side, even though they do get James Robinson back, I mean, Jacksonville's offense hasn't really been that impressive at all. I mean, I know Trevor, and I don't put that really on Trevor Lawrence. I know they lost DJ Chark, one of their main receivers, but just not a lot of creativity with the Jacksonville offense. It's a very college-ish offense, for kind of simplistic, a lot of spread stuff. So that plays the 49ers' hands. I think that they still have a good front seven, although we do have questions about their corners. I mean, they still have good safeties in Ward and Jaquaski Tart, and Fred Warner, obviously a linebacker, and their D-line's still solid. So I'm going San Fran here. I think not only they'll cover, but they'll win, just building off that momentum from the previous week. So that is where I'm going with that. So there's another one of our differences of the week. But now, going over to the West Coast, the Cincinnati Bengals. They are favored by 1.5 going to the Las Vegas Raiders. Okay, are they still calling it the Death Star? I haven't heard it.
Yeah.
Okay, I hope so.
I think so.
It's a great nickname, but I don't know, maybe just because they aren't as relevant. Sorry, Mike. But regardless, John, are you going with the Bengals, or are you going to make our boy Mike happy and go with his Raiders?
Sorry, Mike. I'm taking the Bengals this week. Both teams are coming off back-to-back losses. But the difference is the Bengals had their back-to-back losses, and then last week they had a bye. So they had a week to sort of reevaluate, where the Raiders are fresh off these two losses. And it's just tough for me because the two losses the Raiders had, they put up a combined 30 points. And these weren't necessarily against good defenses. This was the Chiefs and the Giants. Not terrible defenses because, the last stretch of games they've actually been doing pretty all right. But not elite defenses by any means to where you should be putting up 30 points combined against those two. So I don't think the Bengals defense is any better than those two. If they are, just slightly. But I don't know. I just think at this point, I trust the Bengals a little bit more because the Raiders, I don't know. They can't seem to get things figured out offensively.
Yeah. So when I'm scared of, I went with Las Vegas Raiders actually. Because basically a 1.5 basically picking who wins. Factored in home field, I think that would help them. But I'm not entirely confident in the Bengals offense. I mean, once again, they're coming off a bye, so maybe they'll add more creativity. But before the bye, it seemed like teams kind of started to have a feel for what they wanted to do, especially in the red zone. And once again, the Raiders just played the Chiefs last week, so I'm sure that they'll have a good idea of how to slow down these big, passing offenses. And what does scare me is just, both these teams are just very similar, and I'm not really sure what to expect out of their defense. Both defenses had bright spots and low spots. So I'm going with Derek Carr and the Raiders. I think maybe once again a little more desperate. Their division's a lot more tighter. I know the Bengals lost 2 straight, but they're still kind of in the driver's seat. And I think playing at home will help the Raiders. Once again, not amazing, analysis here, but this is a close one. This is a coin flip one, and if you bet on this one, you're crazy. At least in regards to the spread. I don't know about the other props. Man, you're a wild person. I give you credit for that because that takes some balls. But I went with the Raiders here. It was one of those games where I was like, I want to go Cincinnati, but I went Raiders just because it's been like that for me the past few weeks, where it's been the opposite way for me. So one of our differences, I think, our second to last, or we have a few more, but yeah. So that is one of our differences, Cincinnati and the Las Vegas Raiders. But now going to definitely the game of the afternoon, maybe the weekend. Kansas City Chiefs at Kansas City. They are favored by 2.5, hosting John's Dallas Cowboys. Who do you got for this one, John?
First off, this game and the game that we have for the Sunday Nighter, it made me kind of wish that it was like last year where the NFL would just flex different games in a Sunday night.
I know they can. They do that in other seasons, but I'm not sure if it's like that late into the season. It's usually
I think the reason it was more prevalent last year is no fans. So it was
Yeah.
easier because with fans,
Yeah, you
they
have to
bought a
tell them.
ticket. Yeah. And they bought a ticket for that time. And I mean, it'd be kind of ridiculous if, a fan had something planned that day other than the game. But I'm sure that there would be complaints had a game been moved, and that, messes with the NFL's money. So I don't think they're going to do it. Anyway, Chiefs, Cowboys. Chiefs are favored. I'm taking the Cowboys. Call me biased, but I think the Cowboys have just looked better in every phase of the game. Their offense is right now the leading offense in points per game. They can beat you in a multitude of ways, to the run game, to the pass game. So I don't really think the Chiefs defense is going to be able to put up, that great of a fight. And then on the other side, I mean, I do worry that Patrick Mahomes and that offense is going to figure things out, like they did last week. But I believe a lot more in Dan Quinn than I did in Gus Bradley. Like I talked about in our reactions, really disappointed that the Raiders completely strayed away from what every other team was doing that was slowing Kansas City down, and they allowed Tyreek and Kelsey to go one-on-one. I don't expect Dallas to allow that to happen. And this is just a game where you wish that Randy Gregory and DeMarcus Lawrence were healthy and back for, but they're not. And we're just going to have to see what happens. So I'm taking the Cowboys, but if it gets into a shootout, that's going to scare me a little bit.
I'm taking Dallas as well. I need to see another week from Kansas City's offense, like you mentioned, to be consistent, be patient with the short passing game, be patient with the run game, marry the run and the pass together, which they really haven't done. And then also, like you mentioned, Dallas's offense too against Kansas City's defense. I think I give advantage to Dallas offense, like you mentioned. They can run the ball, they can pass the ball, they know how to marry run and play action together. So yeah, it just comes down to more consistency, and Dallas has been the more consistent product all season. While I think we all can agree Kansas City has not been the more consistent team. And in terms of talent level, both are kind of equal in terms of overall talent. So I'm going Dallas. Wouldn't be shocked if they win, but I think it'll be a pretty close game. But yeah, I just can't trust Kansas City right now. So that's basically it. That the main point. I mean, obviously it leads more than that, but
Random thing that you can't bet on this, but if you could, this would be some random fun prop bet. Is part of me feels like the Cowboys are going to want to be extra creative in this game. Like Kellen Moore's going to want to do that because they're playing the Chiefs, who are known for being creative. And Connor McGovern, the offensive lineman for the Cowboys, has played at different points in the year, has played halfback, fullback, offensive lineman, tight end, and wide receiver. He is lined up at all of those positions, and they haven't given him the ball yet. But part of me just has this feeling that at some point they will, and this might be the one where they throw in some trick play to throw him the ball. So
there may
I don't
be
think
like a
any
prop for
book's
him
going
to
to
get a
allow you that.
touchdown at some point. I know they like you can pick who like gets like, oh, this person will have a touchdown in this game. So maybe there might
I
be a
mean, if you can find that,
yeah.
then
Oh yeah.
I'm not going to recommend betting on it. But I would say if I could find somewhere where I could bet that Connor McGovern gets a touchdown at some
Like a
point this
dollar.
year, yeah, like $1 that he gets a touchdown at some point this year, I would totally take that.
Yeah, okay. It's gonna happen like against my Packers or something, like a very key NFC championship game, and we're just not gonna
I
make it. So
I truly believe that they're setting this up that one game they will throw him the ball.
hey, I mean that's the game within the game, right? So all right, so we both went Dallas there. Those in Dallas Chiefs are both our Super Bowls last year, right?
It was, yeah,
I don't have
unfortunately.
I don't think my desk made I would, but I knocked I would. Anyways, so going on from that game, going to the West Coast, Arizona Cardinals, they are favored by 2.5, going to the Seattle Seahawks. Kyler Murray's been practicing a little more this week. It looks like he may be on track to start again, so that's good for the Cardinals. And obviously Russell Wilson will probably play again. So John, who do you have here in this NFC West matchup?
I'm going to make a live change on my pick. I was
Okay.
about to say that I'm taking the Cardinals, but I'm going to take the Seahawks. And the only reason I have for this is Seattle is desperate. I think they want to keep their season alive. I think they rushed Russell back early, and I think that maybe they respond this week. like I said, I was gonna take Arizona. All the logic in me wants to take Arizona. I think if Arizona wins this and they win it comfortably, I'm not gonna be shocked. But we talked about desperation in the past. It was the reason why I picked the Vikings at one point when they were 1-3, 0-3, something like that. I think there was a game where you took the Colts because of that and they won. And so I'm gonna ride the desperation factor and take the Seahawks.
Yeah. I'm going with the Cardinals. I just, especially if Kyler Murray does play, which I expect him to, I think their offense will get back on track. Their defense has been good for the most part, even while he's been gone. And I just don't think Seattle's creative enough offensively. Like as we saw last week, it's like they just run the ball to run the ball, and then they just pass the ball. They don't. There's no like rhyme or reason. They don't set up plays. They don't have play action. They have nothing. They just. I don't mean to sound bait. It may have the greatest way to explain it, but they just call plays. Call plays. It's like the people that just if you play Madden, just live on Ask Madden and just one of those three. You know what I mean? They don't like do
I
certain
do that.
formations and. I mean, I do that sometimes when I'm lazy or
Yeah.
doing something else, but like especially when I'm trying to win or like when I'm playing like
When
a
it
good
gets
person.
serious.
Yeah, like whenever I would actually try to marry things like that. But Seattle doesn't do that. Granted, I will say their defense has been better in the past few weeks, a little more game plan specific, throwing some creative blitzes and stuff. And I think they're doing that because their defensive talent is just not there, which I wish they would do that for their offense. Like, hey, you got DK Metcalf, you have Tyler Lockett. Like, they're pretty good. Like, you should probably focus on like giving them some screens or something. Not every or route has to be 10, 15 yards down the field. Like, So, anyways, with that, and I'm not confident in Russell's finger, and he didn't really push the ball downfield that much. And this Arizona defense, very good front seven, very fast front seven with their linebackers and their edge guys. So I'm going Arizona, but we'll see if John's last minute change works out for him. So now going to the Monday nighter, keeping it on the West Coast, going to SoFi Stadium where the LA Chargers are favored by 5.5 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think Mason Rudolph is expected to play. I'll try to look up the status. I know Joey Bosa and one of their defensive tackles, Jerry Tillery, I believe that's his name. I got COVID Monday, so I'm not sure of their status. But John, who do you have for this one? Well, I looked that up.
I'm gonna take Tampa Bay. Just plain and simple.
This is Chargers Steelers. So
Oh
we're
wait,
not,
sorry,
Monday night yet.
I jumped ahead. Sorry, I was trying to pull up the Thursday night game and I got a little distracted. Anyway, Chargers Steelers. I'm taking the Steelers, and this just comes back to which these next two games are both the sort of theories that I'm riding on the year, and that's when the Steelers are underdogs, they tend to cover. When they're the favorites, they don't. That's the only logic I have here is they are the underdogs, and so I'm going to take the Steelers. That's it.
Okay, I'm trying to see. So sorry, can you hear me? I muted my mic.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ben Roethlisberger's already ruled out. Jerry Tillery's ruled out. Defensive tackle Christian Covington, defensive tackle ruled out. It's Joey gonna play? Sorry, let me Google this. I guess thanks ESPN. Like that wasn't a big.
I think Joey is not supposed to, unless unless something crazy happens with like 2 negative tests or something like that.
He's not on the report because I know.
Oh.
He tested negative. So is he going to play? He tested negative as of yesterday. Status is ruled
He needs 2 negative tests in a row. So
regardless, with the 2 defensive tackles missing, I mean their run defense was already iffy. But regardless, especially since Big Ben is out, I think we saw last week Mason Rudolph is. I just don't think he's the answer at all. Not even at backup, and even though. So I think it's kind of obvious what their game plan's going to be. Definitely now. If I'm Brandon Staley, my corners are living on islands most of the game, or we're stacking the box because we're gonna make Mason Rudolph beat us, and I don't think that he can. And although Pittsburgh's defense is really good still, and that's one thing that does scare me is they get a key turnover and such, especially with how predictable the Chargers offense has become, especially in the pass game. I'm a little bit more confident in the Chargers to win this game and cover the spread. And I just feel like Mason Rudolph's gonna have just the one or two key mistakes because once again he's probably gonna have to make a throw or two, 3rd and longs and such. He's gonna have to force the issue, and I just don't think that he can make a game breaking play, and especially they may get Chase Claypool back. I know he's questionable, but especially if not, I'm not really confident in the Pittsburgh offense to get things going. But hey, it wouldn't shock me if they still, even if Brandon Staley loads the box and such, with how bad the run defense has been, if Najee Harris is still able to carry them to victory. But I'm willing to die on that hill, and I'm going with the Chargers to win and cover for this one. And I already threw it to you, right? You already had the Pittsburgh.
Yep, already got Pittsburgh.
All right. So that is the Sunday nighter. Now we go to the Monday night game. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at Tampa. They are favored by 11.5, hosting the New York Giants. Who do you got here, John?
As I spoiled it earlier, I'm going with the Buccaneers once again, just like the Steelers. My theory on the Bucs, and this is just backed up by the stats, which that doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to be true every week, but when they're away, they lose or they don't cover, and when they're home, they do. So I'm taking the Buccaneers. I also just don't entirely believe in Daniel Jones to be able to deal with the pressure that front seven is going to put up. Buccaneers defense is definitely not the vaunted Buccaneers defense of last year due to a lot of injuries. But the Giants offensive line has injuries. Andrew Thomas, I don't know if he's back yet or if he was even supposed to come back this year. I don't know if you want to pull that up.
I'll look it up.
But regardless, the rest of their offensive line still just has some struggles. And I think Vita Vea is also supposed to miss this game. I think he got injured last week. And Saquon Barkley might come back. So there's just a lot of stuff with injuries, but ultimately I'm still taking Tampa. I think that Tom Brady might feel pretty embarrassed about what happened last week and, might want to bounce back. You're muted.
Okay, looking it up right now. Just New York Giants. I had to pull up the full report because they don't show either of those, unfortunately. New York Giants. Okay. Andrew Thomas still on injured reserve, so he will not be playing this game. And then, Vita Vea, questionable.
Okay.
So, with that being said, I'm actually going with the Giants in this one. I don't think they'll win. I just think that they will cover. I think their defense is still solid enough to slow down Tom Brady in that offense. I mean, we saw last week Washington was able to do so, get some pressure early on Brady, and just kind of get him a little panicky, willing to, and cause that's what happened last week. They got a little panicked and wasn't, waiting for the big play. So he was just, as soon as someone got open, that was who he was going to. I am a little bit scared about New York's offense. I mean, I'm just worried, the Daniel Jones factor. He may have a key turnover or something of the sort. But regardless, I think, especially since the Bucs defense, we know they have issues in the secondary, but the front four hasn't been as good as it was at the end of last year. So I think that the Giants will have some success, move the ball a little bit, score enough points to at least cover. So yeah, I think Tampa Bay wins this game nonetheless, but I just think that the Giants will keep it close and cover the spread. So now one of our key differences. That is a lot of differences. I should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Am I missing one? 1, 2, 5, 7 differences. So 7 differences this week. Only 2 teams on bye are the Rams and the Broncos. So
knowing our luck, you're gonna win like 4 out of 7, and then we're gonna get tied again.
Yep. Hey, it's for the content. Actually, not. No, it's crazy. Anyways, so that is the picks